haven't told this story of my experience with the Dreamcast yet, I wanted to take the time to talk about a game on that console that I felt flew under the radar. No pun intended. Like any other kid growing up in the 90s, I found myself in front of a TV watching one of the greatest movies to ever involve flying a fighter jet, Top Gun. It was from then on that I developed a bit of a fascination with fighter jets and even dreamed of being a pilot someday, which my mother quickly stamped out. Seriously, she had me watch behind enemy lines to bring that dream crashing back to Earth. Pun actually kind of intended.
Wow.
So the fascination with fighter jets kind of made its way from my career aspirations to my video games, where I went looking for a game that felt like Top Gun. Now this was before the age of good internet, so games like Ace Combat for the PlayStation never found their way to me. Instead, I picked up this game called Aerofighters Assault for the Nintendo 64 at Blockbuster one weekend. Now, I know most of you are probably thinking that a flight simulator game probably wouldn't work that well on the Nintendo 64, and you're absolutely right. This game was rough. I had forgotten about it for the longest time, and once I remembered, I looked up some gameplay on YouTube and realized why I forgot about it. Not only does the game just not look that great aesthetically, it doesn't look like it's running that well either, which is totally expected of a game with a scope like that trying to run on N64 hardware. Granted, the N64 wasn't a piece of junk at the time or anything, but the 5th generation of consoles didn't have strong enough hardware to render games like this. This was not the best first impression for flight simulators, but even at like 8, I knew this was a hardware thing. Then I saw what the Sega Dreamcast was capable of on both commercials and when one of my friends got it as just a because kind of gift from his parents. Lucky bastard. I saw games like Sonic Adventure and Power Stone and realized that this was a real leap from the consoles that I had. I already knew at that point that I wanted a Dreamcast, so when the Toys R Us Big Toy Book came in a few weeks later, I scanned the Dreamcast section front to back. There I spotted a game called Airforce Delta, which pictured a fighter jet with catchy logo art on the cover. While I had had that questionable experience with Aerofighters Assault, I was a kid without a single drop of cynicism, so I giddily put one of those I want it stickers on Airforce Delta along with everything else that I wanted for the Dreamcast. So Santa was good to me that year, and I woke up to the Dreamcast on Christmas morning with the aforementioned Sonic Adventure, Power Stone, and Airforce Delta. While Sonic Adventure was understandably my first stop, I popped in Airforce Delta later that day to see what a flight simulator on a next-gen console would be like. I was blown away. The game looked great for the time, it ran well, and the control scheme worked pretty well considering that there was only one thumbstick. Granted, by today's standards, this game has not aged well either. The textures are kind of blurry, and there are parts of the game where it's legitimately kind of hard to see your target when you're fighting in the clouds. Adding to the issue is my AV to HDMI adapter, which is taking that already kind of blurry image and stretching it out even more. Still, with that said, this is a pretty solid game upon returning to it all these years later. Unfortunately, the original disc that I got as a kid was too scratched up to work, but I got another copy at my local retro game store for $5. I guess not every retro game will destroy my bank account after all. Also, as a small aside, I noticed that the Dreamcast had some issues playing this game at first, and upon researching, I noticed that some other games were having the exact same issue. This apparently has to do with the laser that reads the discs, so I watched this tutorial from LevidtheRetroGamer on how to fix it, and it's pretty easy, so if you're having that issue with a game like this, or more likely Shenmue, which was on that list, give that video a watch. All you need is a Phillips head screwdriver. That's it. Airforce Delta is a pretty standard flight sim game by today's standards in terms of story and gameplay. The story is of a fictional war between two fictional countries, the Federated Republic of Dizavalir? Whatever, and the Republic of Laconia. Laconia hires your mercenary group to defend it from Dizavalir. Honestly, the story isn't really that important, and both 8-year-old me and 27-year-old me just skipped through the briefings, only paying attention to the icons that said either kill this thing or defend this thing. From there, you launch on the mission where the game defaults to the first-person view, which with a simple press of the Y button simultaneously will bring you back to the real way to play, third person. Seriously, the only time that I used first-person view was the few times that I actually felt like using the guns on my plane. Speaking of that, remember when I said that the gameplay was pretty standard? I meant it. Essentially, the entire strategy of the game is to get close enough to lock onto your enemies and then press A once or twice to fire missiles and blow them up. To be fair, there isn't a whole lot that can be done with this type of game unless they want to get super in-depth and let you customize the plane with different types of guns, missiles, etc., but that was more of an Armored Core thing at the time. Still, the game does throw you a few curveballs here and there, with the one that really sticks out in my mind being this mission where you have to fly inside a mountain to destroy your target. Sure, the game had a mission prior to this that restricted my flying, but not like this. This is like the second Death Star trench run one from Return of the Jedi. Okay, maybe not that bad, but you need to equip a very specific plane to even have a chance on this mission. It has to have slow speed, high defense, with an acceptable amount of power. Every time I tried this mission as a kid, being an idiot, I would pick my favorite planes and end up crashing them. While this would be no big deal in most games, if you crash a plane in Airforce Delta, then you lose it and have to buy it again. While this isn't a big deal once or twice, it starts adding up if you keep crashing in this mission. It wasn't until I booted this game up now that I actually started reading the stats of the planes and realized that maybe the F-14 Tomcat wasn't the best call for this mission. So after all this time, I finally got to the end of the game, which is signaled by this base you just kicked the crap out of transforming into a nuclear super base. Not sure what was with Sega and transforming bases at this time, but I wish they hadn't abandoned it because it's pretty cool. From there, I grabbed my trusty F-14 and went off into battle. After obliterating the super base, the last mission is a one-on-one with the leader of the enemy faction. It's meant to be sort of a Wild West duel type thing, especially with the sunset in the background, but this is kind of a dumb last mission, and I chose to see the previous mission as the climax of the game. Now, I completed this game on very easy, which was the difficulty that I had it set to as a kid, so to get the sense of the other side of the spectrum, I restarted the game on hard. To add an additional challenge for myself, I wanted to see how far I could make it using the starter jet, the F-5E Tiger II. I got to the second mission. After unlocking a better plane and getting through a few more missions, I thought I may actually go back and try to beat Airforce Delta again on hard. On hard mode, your choice of plane really becomes an important choice, as speed, defense, and power can make all the difference in missions where enemy planes are all over you and constantly firing missiles at you. Considering that the game is only about 20 short missions long, the idea of it isn't too bad. Granted, 20 short missions isn't a great thing for those looking for more meat on the bone for their games, but what's here is fun. Finally, I really like this game's OST. It really screams late 90s video game music and very much fits into the mold of the type of music that comes to mind when I think of Sega Dreamcast. Overall, this game is still quite fun, and if you're a Dreamcast owner, then this game will only cost you about $5, which is totally a fair price. It's short, the graphics haven't aged too well, but there's still a fun game underneath that is worth some of your time. So that'll be it for today. If you guys like this video, then please feel free to leave me a like and subscribe to see more from me. Thank you everyone, and I will see you next time.